He said it half laughing, half worried. She'll hurt you. I didn't answer him then, because even I wasn't sure if it was a warning or a challenge. I work in a small repair shop tucked between a dry cleaner and a cafe that smells like burnt espresso and cheap pastries. Tuesdays are quiet. The air hums with the sound of soldering irons and static from an old radio that only plays music when it wants to. That was the day she first walked in, a woman who looked like she belonged somewhere cleaner, quieter, softer. She was holding an old Polaroid camera, a real one, with scratches along the silver edges. It jammed, she said, placing it on the counter. Her voice carried that calm tone people get when they're used to fixing things themselves before asking for help. Up close, she had that kind of presence that doesn't try for attention but still changes the air around it. Mid-40s, maybe. Her hair was pinned up like she'd done it in a hurry and then forgot about it halfway through the day. There was a faint ink mark on her wrist, a line, maybe from a pen. I noticed too much, I think. It's old, I said, flipping the camera over in my hands. Most people just buy a new one. Most people don't keep what still remembers them, she replied. That made me look up. She smiled a little, like she'd said too much, and maybe she had. While I worked on the jammed reel, she wandered around the shop, touching the edges of broken things. Clocks that didn't tick, radios that hummed in static, a stack of phones I'd meant to scrap. Every few minutes, she'd ask a question, not to make conversation, but because she seemed genuinely curious about how something small could stop an entire machine from working. When the camera clicked back into place, I looked up and she was watching me. Not in the way people look when they're waiting, but like she was seeing. There's a difference. You're good at this, she said. I shrugged. I just fix things. Not just, she murmured. You listen to what they need. There was a silence after that. One of those that stretch a bit too long, like both of us noticed it at the same time, but neither wanted to break it. The radio crackled faintly. Outside, a delivery truck honked twice. I handed her the camera back, careful not to brush her fingers, but she reached first, fingertips grazing mine just enough for my breath to stutter. It wasn't even a second, but the warmth stayed, like static that refused to fade. She smiled again, softer this time. What do I owe you? Nothing, I said before thinking. That made her tilt her head slightly. Then you'll have to let me bring you coffee next time. Fair exchange. She left before I could answer, the little bell above the door chiming like punctuation at the end of a sentence that felt unfinished. After she was gone, I realized I'd forgotten to ask her name. The Polaroid camera sat on the counter, the repaired reel still clicking softly, like a small heart waking up again. I don't know why, but I pressed the shutter, and the photo that came out was blank white. Still developing. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her hands. The way she looked at broken things like they weren't useless, just waiting for someone patient enough to understand. I told my friend about her later. That's when he said it, she'll hurt you. And I remember answering, without really meaning to, then let pain be my proof of love. She came back 2 weeks later, same camera, same quiet tone, but this time, it wasn't broken. I think the film's expired, she said, setting it on the counter again. I could tell it wasn't about the camera. Something about the way her hand lingered, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine. It felt like she just needed somewhere to be that wasn't home. The afternoon light cut through the blinds in thin gold lines, striping the floor and her face. She looked tired, though not in a way that sleep could fix. More like she'd been holding herself together too long. I checked the camera anyway, pretending to focus. It's fine, I said after a while. You just have to shake it a bit after it prints. It still works. She smiled faintly. Lucky me. Something still works. I didn't know what to say to that. So I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how else to fill the space. She laughed too, quiet and short, the kind of laugh people make when they're not used to being heard. We talked more that day. About nothing important. Her work, my workshop, the radio that refused to pick up anything but static. I noticed her hands as she spoke, how she kept them close to herself, as if she was afraid of letting them rest anywhere too long. When she brushed a strand of hair from her face, her fingers trembled slightly. You okay? I asked before I could stop myself. She looked at me for a moment. Her eyes were sharp, alert, like she was deciding how much truth to hand over. Then softer. I'm just learning how to be alone again. Something in my chest pulled at that. Not pity, something quieter, heavier. You don't have to learn it all at once, I said. She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. You say that like it's a choice. The radio crackled behind us, a soft burst of static that filled the pause. She looked around, maybe searching for something else to comment on, and her gaze landed on the half-finished clock on my workbench. You fix time too? She asked, with a small tilt of her head. Only the easy kinds, I said. This time, she laughed for real. It changed her. The lines around her eyes softened, her shoulders loosened. For a second, I saw the woman she might have been before the world asked her to hold everything up by herself. She leaned closer to examine the gears, and I caught the faint scent of rain on her coat, though it hadn't rained all day. Maybe it lingered from somewhere else, somewhere she'd rather not talk about. When she turned to leave, she hesitated at the door. You know, she said, glancing back, I don't even like coffee that much. I smiled. Then what'll you bring next time? She looked down, then back at me. Maybe something that lasts longer. And then she was gone. Again, leaving behind only the faint trace of her voice and that quiet pull in the air that made it hard to breathe. I watched the door for a long time after it closed, half expecting her to walk back in. But she didn't. Just the silence and the slow, steady tick of a clock I hadn't finished fixing. It started raining halfway through the evening. One of those rains that sound heavier than they are, like the sky's pretending to cry harder than it can. She came in just before closing, hair slightly damp, coat folded over her arm, a thin line of mascara smudged near her eye. You're still open, she said, surprised. Storm's good for business, I lied. There hadn't been a customer in 2 hours. She smiled faintly, setting her camera down again. Not broken this time either. Just there. Between us. I didn't want to go home yet. I nodded, pretending to tidy up tools I'd already put away. The hum of the fluorescent light above us filled the quiet. Outside, the rain tapped against the glass, steady and soft. She sat on the stool near the counter, crossing her legs, hands resting on her knees. You ever feel like you fix things so you don't have to think about the ones you can't? I looked up. Every day. That made her laugh. Quietly, almost to herself. She leaned forward, elbows on the counter, and for a moment the space between us felt too small, too alive. The scent of her shampoo, something faintly floral, mixed with the sharp tang of solder and metal. I used to come here with my ex, she said suddenly. He hated this place. Said it smelled like dust and regret. Her words hung there, too honest to ignore. Guess he didn't see what's worth keeping, I said. Her lips curved slightly, but her eyes dropped to the counter. He saw enough to leave. I didn't know whether to say I'm sorry or he's an idiot, so I said neither. Instead, I slid a small screwdriver across the counter toward her. Want to help? She hesitated, then took it. Our fingers brushed again, longer this time. Intentional or not, I couldn't tell. She worked beside me, carefully, silently, both of us pretending the closeness meant nothing. At one point, her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted a screw. You ever think some people aren't meant to be fixed? She asked. I looked at her, the tired eyes, the guarded tone that kept cracking no matter how she tried to hide it. Maybe they just need someone who doesn't give up so easily. Her breath caught. She met my gaze then, really met it, and for the first time I couldn't look away. There was something raw there, like she was standing on the edge of saying too much. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched like it burned her. The screen lit up, a name I didn't read, but the look in her eyes told me everything. She silenced it, quick and nervous, before it rang again. Sorry, she said, voice tight. Old habits. The air between us shifted, fragile, tense, real. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. She set the screwdriver down and stood. I should go. I wanted to stop her, to say something, anything, but all I managed was a quiet. You forgot your camera. She turned at the door, rain spilling light across her face. Keep it. For now. And then she was gone, the bell chiming softly behind her, leaving me alone with the hum of the light, the scent of her perfume, and a camera that still remembered her hands. I almost went after her. Almost. She didn't come by for almost a month. By the time she finally did, I'd stopped pretending I wasn't waiting. I was fixing an old radio when I heard the doorbell. That same soft chime that always sounded like relief and trouble at once. "Did you miss me?" she asked, standing in the doorway, half smiling, half daring me to answer. Her voice was light, but her eyes weren't. There were dark circles beneath them, faint but deep. The kind that come from thinking too much in quiet rooms. "I fixed your camera," I said. "You always do." I set it on the counter. Neither of us moved. The silence stretched, heavy, but not uncomfortable, just too honest. She looked around the shop as if trying to remember where she was, or maybe trying not to remember why she was here. "You ever get tired of pretending you're fine?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "Sometimes," I said. "Mostly when I'm not." She gave a small laugh, the kind that trembles on its way out. "You're too young to sound like that. And you're too strong to sound like you believe that," I said. She stared at me for a long time, something flickering in her eyes, something halfway between wanting to run and wanting to stay. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I don't have to," I replied. "You look like someone who's always holding her breath." That made her inhale sharply, as if caught in the act. She looked away, pressing her palms against the counter, grounding herself. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because you mean them." The air felt different after that. Not charged, not electric. Just fragile. Like one wrong word would make it all collapse. I took a slow step closer, close enough to see the faint reflection of the workshop light in her eyes. "I don't know what this is," I said quietly. She didn't answer right away. The radio behind me hissed with low static, the rain outside barely audible. She finally said, "It's nothing." "It has to be." I nodded, but neither of us moved. Then she asked, "Do you think people like us get second chances? Real ones?" I wanted to say yes, but the truth sat heavier in my throat. "Only if we stop running from the first one." Her lip trembled, so faintly I almost missed it. We stood there, two people pretending the world outside that small shop didn't exist, or maybe hoping it didn't. When she finally spoke again, her voice broke like glass in the quiet. "This is the first time in years someone looked at me like I wasn't already gone." There wasn't anything left to say after that. I didn't touch her. I didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. The wanting, the fear, the impossibility. She turned toward the door, but paused halfway, hand resting on the frame. Without looking back, she whispered, almost to herself, "Promise me you'll forget this." I didn't answer, because I knew I wouldn't. It was late again when she came by, later than usual, the kind of hour that makes everything feel slightly out of place. The street outside was half asleep, neon lights flickering across rain-soaked pavement. She looked different this time. Not tired, not guarded, just hollowed out, like she'd run out of words somewhere along the way. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. That was new. She'd never said that before. I motioned toward the stool, but she didn't sit. Instead, she pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket, creased, water-stained at the edges. "I found this while cleaning out a drawer." She held it up, her fingers trembling just enough to make the paper rustle. I didn't ask what it was, but she opened it anyway. Inside was a faded photograph, a younger version of her, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. He looked maybe my age now. The camera caught them mid-laugh, sun in their hair, her hand resting easily on his shoulder. "His name was Daniel," she said, voice thin. "He used to fix things too. Radios, clocks, cameras. Said broken things told stories if you listened long enough." She laughed softly, not fondly, not bitterly, just tired. "He died when we were 23. Motorbike accident. I never even told him I loved him." The words sat between us like a quiet confession, heavy but gentle. I swallowed hard. "Is that why you keep coming here?" She nodded slowly. "You remind me of him. Not how you look, how you pause before you speak, how you hold things like they matter." I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to step closer, to say something that could ease the weight she was carrying. But another part, the selfish part, ached at the thought that I was only filling someone else's shadow. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure for what. She looked up then, eyes glistening, a faint smile trembling at the corners. "Don't be. It's not fair to you, I know. But I don't think I was supposed to find you. Maybe I was supposed to remember him. I didn't speak. The rain outside filled the silence, steady, rhythmic, like the world was reminding us it still existed. Finally, she slid the photo across the counter toward me. Keep it, she whispered. It doesn't belong to me anymore. I shook my head. It's yours. Her eyes softened. So were the best parts of me. Once. She turned to leave, her reflection catching briefly in the glass door. Older, lonelier, but lighter somehow, as if letting the memory go had taken some of her with it. When the door closed, I looked down at the photograph. The edges were frayed, the colors fading, but the light in her smile, his smile, still burned through. For the first time since I'd met her, I realized this wasn't a beginning. It was the echo of something that had already ended, and somehow, I had wandered into the aftershock. And still, even knowing that, I couldn't bring myself to let the photo go. She didn't come for days after that. Then one evening, when the light outside had turned that bruised shade between dusk and night, she appeared again. No coat, no pretense, just herself. The shop was quiet. The only sound came from the small clock I'd finally finished fixing, its steady, unbothered ticking filling the air like a heartbeat. She stood by the doorway for a long time before saying, "I thought you'd hate me for what I said." I tried, I admitted. That made her smile, a tired but genuine one. She stepped closer, the faint smell of rain still clinging to her. "You kept the photo." I nodded. Didn't know how to throw it away. She moved closer to the counter, eyes tracing the edges of the room. The clutter, the dust, the familiar stillness between us. "Daniel would have liked you," she said softly. "You listen the way he did. Not to answer, just to understand." "I'm not him," I said. "I know," she whispered. "That's why this hurts differently." The silence that followed wasn't sharp like before. It was gentler, as if both of us had stopped fighting the truth of what had been growing between us, something we hadn't planned, hadn't named, but had built piece by piece in quiet rooms and broken things. I motioned for her to sit. She did. I poured 2 cups of tea from the chipped kettle in the back, the kind that always left a faint metallic taste. She wrapped her hands around the mug, as if she needed the warmth more than the drink. Neither of us spoke for a while. The hum of the lights buzzed above. The rain whispered against the glass. "I don't know what to do with this," she said finally. "Me neither." Her eyes met mine then, steady, tired, unguarded. There was no spark, no sudden rush of confession. Just recognition. 2 people sitting in the same ache, finally naming it without words. "I keep thinking," she murmured, "that maybe it's not love we find at the wrong time. Maybe it's love that finds us when we're wrong for ourselves." That stayed with me. The way she said it, quiet but sure, like she'd carried it for years and only now found the courage to let it out. When she reached for her mug, her fingers brushed mine again. That same electric warmth, but softer now, no longer an accident. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. We stayed like that for a long time, the world outside dimming into the kind of night that doesn't ask for anything. No promises, no plans, just presence. At some point, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against my shoulder, not in surrender, not in need, but in understanding. I didn't move. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "Let's not ruin this by naming it." And I understood, because some things are truer when they stay unfinished. The clock kept ticking. The rain didn't stop. And in that quiet, unremarkable room, something like love finally happened, without ever being said. It's been a year since the last time I saw her. The shop's different now, brighter paint, new tools, cleaner shelves. But every now and then, when the light hits the counter just right, I still see her there, one hand resting on the camera, half smiling, always about to say something she never did. People ask sometimes why I keep a faded Polaroid on the wall. They think it's a customer or a friend. I just tell them it reminds me not everything worth fixing can be saved, and that's not always a tragedy. The photo's edges are curling now, its colors fading. But the moment it captured, laughter mid-breath, sunlight through her hair, still glows faintly beneath the wear. That's what she taught me, I think. That memory isn't about keeping things perfect. It's about holding what time can't quite erase. She changed the way I see silence. It used to feel like an absence, something that needed filling. With her, silence became a language. It said everything we were too careful, too afraid, or too human to say. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she moved. Maybe she went back to the life she'd been trying to live without ghosts. I like to think she's somewhere quiet, finally breathing easily. Maybe even smiling at someone who makes her laugh without remembering why it hurts. As for me, I still fix things. But I don't rush anymore. I let the work take its time, the way she used to study the world, patient, deliberate, present. There's a calm in that kind of waiting. Sometimes, when a customer brings in something too broken to mend, I still open it up anyway. Not because I think I can save it, but because I remember what it felt like to be seen, even when I didn't need saving. That's what she gave me. Not love in the way stories like to tell it. Not the kind that ends in arms and promises, but the kind that teaches you how to look at the world differently after it's gone. Love doesn't always stay. Sometimes it just passes through, leaves you quieter, braver, softer. The night she left, she forgot her umbrella. I still keep it behind the counter. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me believes she'll come back for it. Maybe I just like knowing there's still a trace of her here, somewhere between the smell of rain and solder and the ticking of old clocks. Whatever it is, I've stopped trying to understand it. Some stories don't need endings, only echoes. And if you've ever had someone like that, someone who walked into your life, changed its temperature, and left before you could name what it was, then maybe you already know what I mean. Tell me, if they came back today, would you fix what broke, or let it stay beautiful in the ruin?